God aften. Mit navn er Frederik Uldal. Jeg er fra Heseltine, Danmark. Jeg vil gerne byde jer velkommen, og jeg er glad for, at I er kommet her på en lørdag aften. Vi har to taler i dag. Vi har Betz, som er pilot og eventyrer, og så har vi Gary Heseltine fra England, som er politibetjent. Jeg vil bare lige sige et par få praktiske ting. Vi skal huske at slukke jeres mobiltelefon for det første. Og så vil jeg meget gerne sige utrolig meget tusind tak til Pia Knudsen her, som har været den alt overskyggende primus motor i at få Gary Heseltine og Gitter her til København. Så er der en e-mail-liste herovre, hvis der er nogen, der vil have lyst til at få lidt information fremover på e-mail, som man kan skrive sig på. Og der ligger også lidt materiale om os, Exopolitik Danmark. Og så er der nogle DVD'er, som hvis man køber sådan en, så støtter man Gary Heseltine. Først vil Gitter, han vil gå på her om et øjeblik, og han vil snakke til kl. 19.20. Så fra kl. 19.20 til 20.20, så kommer Gary på. Og så holder vi en pause fra kl. 20.20 til kl. 20.45, cirka 25 minutter, hvor man kan gå ud og få noget øl og vand og kaffe ude i Kulturhusets Café. Så kommer Gary igen på kl. 20.45 til 21.15, og fra 21.15 til 22, der har vi sådan en spørgerunde, så hvis I har nogle spørgsmål så til Gary og til Gitter, så tager vi dem der. Hvis der er enkelte meget, meget ultrakorte opklarende ting, så kan vi godt tage dem undervejs, men altså en egentlig spørgerunde, så hvis I kan huske på jeres spørgsmål til bagefter, så vil det være fint, og så skal det være ude af lokalet 22.30. Og så vil jeg bare overlade ordet til Betz, pilot. Værsgo.
Ja, god aften alle sammen. Mit navn er Betz. Det er et tysk navn, og det er fordi jeg er født i Tyskland for tilbage i dinosaurernes tid. Jeg er 71 år gammel, og jeg er pilot, og piloter taler ikke om UFO'er. Det gør man bare ikke, fordi pressen har endnu ikke fundet ud af at lade være med at latterliggøre den slags ting, så en pilot, der transporterer til dagligt hundredvis af passagerer, kan ikke risikere, at man mister sin troværdighed og måske bliver udsat for en drugtest ligefrem. Men den her hændelse, der havde vi så mange vidner, at jeg godt tør at fortælle om det offentligt. Jeg har spurgt mange af mine kollegaer, og mange af dem har set mange forskellige ting, og de ved, hvordan tingene ser ud i luften. Men for at komme tilbage til min start som pilot, som 14-årig begyndte jeg at flyve, og jeg flyver stadigvæk. Og grunden til, at jeg går med krykker i øjeblikket, det er, fordi jeg lige har fået skiftet begge mine hofteled på en gang. Og det er 3 år siden, så jeg bruger den stadigvæk, så den får ikke at miste balancen. Men lægerne er meget tilfreds med fremskridtene, det er jeg også. Men det er grunden til det, og jeg vil også gerne sætte mig ned, fordi det gør lidt ondt, når jeg står op. Men i de 57 år, jeg har opholdt mig i luften, har jeg fløjet ca. 150 forskellige flyvemaskiner, og har en samlet flyvetid på 20.000 timer, som svarer næsten til cirka til 2,5 år i luften, så uafbrudt 24 timer i døgnet. Så de siger det bare, fordi for at understrege, at jeg vil tillade mig at påstå, at jeg sådan nogenlunde ved, hvordan tingene i luften ser ud. Og lad os komme til selve hændelsen her. Og der har jeg en lille introduktion med. Fra det land, det hænger sammen med, at jeg var 23 år ansat i Mærsk som pilot, og fløj så de forskellige flyvemaskiner, og til sidst også i mange år den der Boeing 737, som Mærsk havde, som sikkert nogen kan huske. Og vi havde en leasingkontrakt med Guyana Airways. I de 3 lande her, kan I se, det er Venezuela her til venstre, og Guyana, så er det Suriname, og fransk Guyana, hvor man stadigvæk det bruger man som til at fyre raketter af, så de kun lige får orientere, hvor det foregår hen. Men Guyana selv havde ikke nogen flyvemaskine, men de var begyndt at flyve ruteflyvning, og så ville de have nogen til at starte det op, og det gjorde Mærsk, så der var jeg med til at levere flyveren. Og da jeg kom derned, fandt jeg ud af, at de selv manglede piloter, så jeg blev ansat som buspilot i Guyana også, og så fløj ind imellem på Mærsk's Boeing. Guyana er et lille land, som... skal lige se, at jeg rammer den rigtige knap. Se, er det der? Det var der. Nej, det var forkert. Jeg kan ikke se noget. Det er i hvert fald den der maske af Boeing, som vi fik leveret. Der står Flying for Guyana Airways på den. Og lige for at komme tilbage, jeg skal lige se... der. Det var så... Jeg kommer lige tilbage forfra til kortet, så herfra startede det rigtigt. Der har vi Guyana, og landet er simpelthen et naturskønt område, uden industri af nogen art. Og det er jungle, det er regnskov, det er malaria, det er sumpområder. Det er et fantastisk naturområde, men ikke noget, der kunne ligne et land med industri. Her har vi så en af de der landingsbaner, som vi fløj til. Så det, der ligger her, det er sådan en lærbane, hvor der lige har været 1000 skovlige i gang med at lave en bane, der er ret ujævn. Og så sådan så flypladserne ud. Kun lige for at understrege, at vi har med et land at gøre, hvor man flyver rundt med et par fragtfly. Og der er ingen vej. Den eneste mulighed for at komme rundt i landet, det er per fly. Og dem har de ikke særlig mange, og de har faktisk kun 2 af dem her. Og vi hentede oksekød ud i savannen, som var næsten halvt fordærvet, da vi endelig kom frem. Og det er den der guyanesiske fragtfly, og det er en engelsk Hawker Siddeley af 748, som Gary sikkert kender. Og den fløj vi fragt med i landet, og sådan ser det ud det meste af tiden over landskabet. Og det var så den her Boeing, så det var det, som jeg kan sige til det. Så kan vi bare kigge på kortet, skal vi bruge lidt senere. Og selve hændelsen skete på en passagerflyvning fra Trinidad Tobago til Georgetown. Georgetown ligger her. Og det var, at vi startede ved solnedgangen fra Trinidad. Og som I ved, så med sådan en Boeing der, så fik vi solen til at stå op igen, inden vi nåede op i 33.000 fod, sikkert 11.000 meter. Og så kunne vi se på solnedgangen en gang til, og så bliver det mørkt dernede, og det bliver meget hurtigt mørkt, fordi solen den går ned i havet. Lodret, fordi det er på ekvatoren, så bliver det helt mørkt. Og når man flyver på den her strækning, så er der stort set ingen lys, man kan se undervejs. Så vi sidder der og flyver lige ud og keder os lidt, fordi der er heller ingen trafik. Vi har vores høretelefoner på, og så hvis man bliver kaldt op, og vi var blevet skiftet til frekvensen i Georgetown. Og i den her totale stilhed, så er der pludselig en, der råber, en flyvemaskine på frekvensen, at de bliver fuldt af et lys. Og det var en af mine kollegaer, kaptajn Khan, som fløj en af de der fragtfly, som jeg lige har vist jer. Han lå foran os i cirka 20 minutters afstand, noget lavere og noget langsommere. Men han blev fuldt af et lys, et kraftigt lys, bare sådan en ball of light, sådan en, man sige, en lille sol eller en stor stjerne. Der var ikke nogen kanter på eller noget som helst, det er bare et kraftigt lys, sådan en kraftig filmprojektør, eller hvad man kan forestille sig. Og så skifter vi lige billedet ind til hans cockpit, fordi jeg fik bagefter en så nøjagtig beskrivelse af hele hændelsen, at jeg kan fortælle jer nu med det samme, hvad der skete i den flyver foran mig. Fordi kaptajnen går så overlader styrmanden styringen og kravler ned i fragtkabinen, som er mørklagt, der er ingen passager, for at få en bedre mulighed for at kigge på det der fænomen, for at se, om der var eventuelle refleksioner fra metalrefleksioner eller en roterende fra en helikopter men der var intet, der er ikke noget metal, der var ikke noget som helst, det var bare det her enorme lys, som var et blændende lys. Så går han tilbage i cockpittet og kalder Georgetown op og siger til dem, at nu der er jo ingen trafik, det er kun os langt bagved, og fortæller dem, at nu ændrer han kurs og højde, fordi han vil gerne ryste de der underlige fænomen af sig. Så han begynder at stige, og lyset stiger med ham, og han begynder at synke, og han laver drej til venstre, og til sidst så drejer han altså meget skarpt ind til selve lyset, og så falder lyset bagud, holder sig bag ved flyveren og følger ham, og så kommer de så tæt på Georgetown under indflyvningen til landing, at han mister lyset. Det er forsvundet væk. Og giv mig lige et sekund. Vi nærmer os Georgetown. Det er sådan en fuldstændig klar tropenat uden måne. Men I kan se, når man så ligger den højde der, så kan man se byens lys på lang afstand. Så vi begynder at gå ned med Boeing, og vi har cirka 100 passagerer ombord. Og under nedstigningen, da vi så kommer ned i cirka 1800 meters højde, over en totalt ubeboet jungle, et sumplandskab, som er simpelthen bare et rent malariaområde. Kommer ned der, så bliver der foran os pludselig tændt et lys. Kapum. Et kraftigt lys, som ligner fuldstændig det lys, som vi har fået beskrevet af ham foran os. Og så kort efter er vi så hen over det, og så beslutter vi os til at flyve en runde, hvor vi har tid til at informere kabinen og kabinepersonalet og passagererne om, at vi har et fænomen udenfor, som vi gerne have, at der bliver set af så mange personer som muligt. Fordi vi vil gerne have vidner på det, fordi vi vil ikke komme hjem med en historie, så tror jeg, vi har set, at vi har haft hallucinationer. Så da vi kommer rundt igen og flyver hen imod lyset, det er der stadigvæk, så tænder vi det samlede lys på Boeing, det er sådan en stor samlekontakt, og slår på i 2 sekunder, og så tager vi af igen, og i samme øjeblik, så slukker lyset foran os 2 sekunder, og kommer på igen. Og så er vi hen over det, and that's it. Det er det, jeg har set, jeg ved ikke, hvad det var, og jeg tror først på UFO, når jeg selv har rørt ved en, men det er bare min historie. Og næste dag var militæret ud og flyve med alt, hvad de kunne få i luften for at afsøge området og se på området, om de kunne se nogen som helst spor i nærheden af træerne. Hvis det nu var et eller andet, der havde udgivet stor varme, så kunne man forestille sig, at måske nogle trækroner var svededage eller noget. Men det var ikke på jorden, fordi hvis det havde været på jorden, så ville vi kunne have set skyggerne af træerne, eller noget, der skinner ned på jorden, for der var så meget vand, at det ville også have genspejlet det nedefra. Så de fandt intet. Og det var min historie. Så jeg glæder mig til at høre Garys, som var meget mere omfattende. Jeg vil bare sige dertil, efter, altså inden oplevelsen her, der var jeg en meget, meget stor skeptiker af UFO-historier og ting og lignende ting. Jeg tænker, der er også, når man kigger på nettet, så er der også så meget, som får en til at tro, at det gider vi slet ikke beskæftige os med. Men efter den her oplevelse, der har jeg begyndt bare sådan stille og roligt at spørge nogle af mine kollegaer, spørge radarfolk og spørge nogle militærpiloter, jeg kender. Og det er jo fantastisk at finde ud af, at ens kollegaer ligger inde med masser af de der oplevelser og rapporter og ting og sager, de har set. Velopmærket professionelle piloter, som ved, hvad det er, de snakker om. Og som Gary fortæller, der findes tusindvis af rapporter, officielle piloter allerede nu fra hele kloden, af piloter, inklusive astronauter, om det her fænomen. Så tak fordi I vil lytte til mig. Det var min historie. Så jeg vil gerne fortsætte, Gary.
Just stand and we'll do something.
Ja, jeg stiller mig op bare for at vise, at jeg kan stå.
David.
Yeah, David, can you hear me in the back? Right, okay. As a police officer, before I go into my lecture, I just want to ask Dieter a couple of questions. And the reason why I want to ask the questions is because he is a pilot. And pilots are generally, in my opinion, the best ever reporters of UFOs. For obvious reasons, really, that when we get on a plane, we give our lives to that pilot. We entrust our lives with that pilot to take us from A to B. You best do this very quickly. Okay? Okay. Data, if you stay with me. Right. Okay. Pilots, when you were flying, how many hours of flying time have you got?
20,000.
20,000 flying hours. How many aircraft have you flown in your lifetime?
So approximately 150 different planes.
Okay. When you are flying, you must have encountered many atmospheric phenomena. Can you describe some of these to me?
There are high clouds, there are sunsets, there are contrails from high-flying airplanes, jet fighters, and all kind of things that could look very suspicious. But I mean, we have seen them so many times, and there are phenomena that are natural.
Okay, so now in direct relation to your particular sighting over Guyana, the object that you saw, and you've explained this to me privately, is that an aircraft was being followed by an unidentified light, is that right?
That is correct.
And you were monitoring what the pilot ahead of you was saying about the light that was following him?
That's correct too, because I talked to him for a long time afterwards. We got all the details.
How long did the pilot ahead of you have the light behind him?
He encountered the light, and the whole story with the light, contact with the light, was approximately 5-6 minutes.
Okay, so let's just think about this. This is not ghost story. Ooh, 2 seconds, we don't see it, we do see it. This is 5 or 6 minutes of a pilot ongoing UFO encounter. So if you think about it, count on your watches now for the next 5 minutes. And in reality, 5 minutes is quite a long time. So this is a visual sighting that the pilot is having with an unknown object that's following him and presumably making him a bit uncomfortable. It would make me uncomfortable. And he is clearly getting uncomfortable. Later on, the object, he lands, is that right?
Yeah, he lands and the object stays behind and vanishes.
Okay, so the object vanishes. Well, if it was a plane, an atmospherics, which we'll talk about in a minute, it shouldn't just vanish, it could have gone away, but he's saying it's vanished or whatever. But the point is that eventually you yourself, as co-pilot of a commercial airline, then get a visual sighting. Now this is again good for the skeptics, or good for me, but bad for the skeptics, because the object is not in the sky above him. When he sees it and has a visual, the object is below him. So straight away we get rid of all this. It's Venus, a low-flying Venus. It's a low-flying star, it's a low-flying satellite. It's none of those things. This is a visual sighting below the level of Dieter's aircraft. An important distinction. So therefore, he has got a distinction. Now, he's already told me, what he said was, we want to tell how many passengers?
So 100.
100 passengers. So what they do is they then say, everybody look out the window, because we want witnesses to this. Why do we want witnesses to this, Dieter?
Because we don't want to have a drug test.
The main reason why pilots, architects, police officers don't come forward more often is because they perceive a risk to their career, and 2, ridicule. I'll talk about that in my lecture. Very good reasons, if you're a professional person, not to come forward, because there are many pilots who are being grounded after saying we've had a UFO sighting. And in fact, there was one of the most famous cases, the Japan Airlines from 1986. Taruchi, the pilot, he was grounded and he got something like 20,000 hours because he went public. So it's a very big risk. Okay, so in relation to this sighting, it gets even better. So everybody is looking at the object, they fly around the object, and it's still there, sat stationary. How many planes sit stationary? I can only think of a few aircraft that can stay stationary. Was it an aircraft?
No idea.
How would you describe the physical description?
It's a light. It's just a ball of light. It's just a big shiny ball of light with no details in it. It's just
okay, I will mention this in my lecture. The most common UFO seen is a bright white light. There are other shaped sources, cigars, triangles. The most common UFO you are more likely to see is a bright white light. And I'll talk about that in detail. And at the end, if we have time, I'll show you some clips of daylight UFOs of bright white light. In daylight, not night time, in daylight. Because people say there aren't daylight clips, but there are. Okay?
One thing I forgot to tell is I didn't mention the date. It was the 21st of December 1981 at around 8 o'clock in the evening.
Okay.
Which is the shortest day in...
Maybe coincidental. Yeah, longest day, shortest day. Okay, but one important thing that Peter told me about his sighting, which I find very interesting, and has happened before, is that at one point, as they're flying around the objects, they told the passengers it's on the ground, let's take a look, we want witnesses to this to back us up. They decide to dim, or to put on the lights first.
On the outside lights?
Right, they decide to put on the outside lights. Did you mention this?
Yes, it says
okay, this is important. The object is stationary below them. They're flying around. They then decide to put on all of the exterior lights of the aircraft. For how long?
2 seconds.
2 second bursts. Lights on. What happens when you turn them on?
The light in front of us switched off for 2 seconds and came on again.
Now, we can read that as a coincidence, or we can possibly read that into some kind of communication there. That has been done before by pilots, because they not only are frightened for what could happen, they don't know if this is friendly or foe, but there's certainly many recorded pilot cases where they have switched the lights out, cabin lights out, put them on, and vice versa, and there has been an interaction. Either the object has instantly reacted by going away, or coming close, or doing something that seems to react instantaneously to this kind of attempt at communication. That's another story. Many people, Dita, are sceptical about UFOs. In all your time flying, is there any way in conventional terms of astronomy, atmospherics, or man-made craft that could explain the light that you saw?
Whatsoever, not whatsoever, nothing at all.
So in 20,000 flying hours, he has never encountered a light like that in his life before. Thank you, Dita. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, I just need to do a little bit of playing around to get my presentation up on the ball, but what I would say to you first off is good day, Copenhagen. Is that right? Good day, Copenhagen. We're getting there. Alas, my Danish is not beyond that, which is a shame because I feel guilty that you can speak English so well. I feel very jealous of the fact that you can speak so well. Okay, let's just load up the PowerPoint. Okay, and I'm going to ask some audience participation questions here. because I like to do things a little bit differently. Right, okay. First off, I will tell you a little bit about myself. You may have heard of me, you may not. My name is Gary Heseltine, and I am a detective constable, which means I work on all manner of inquiries. I have worked on all manner of inquiries, murder, manslaughter, rape. I've been a police officer for over 22 years. Prior to that, I was in the Royal Air Force Police. So in total, kind of 28 years policing experience. I've been a detective for the last 16 years. I'm an advanced interviewer of suspects and witnesses. I was involved in the London bombings, obviously in London, interviewing police officers who were first on the scene in the specialist interviewing role. I've also worked on several major rail disasters in that similar capacity. Okay, that's my background. But what I want to do first is going to ask some questions of you. Okay, please put your hand up and don't be afraid, because I'm not going to pick you out. But please put your hand up if you've had any kind of UFO experience. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Thank you. That's perhaps 10% of the room. Okay? Maybe 15%. A few people. Now, one of the main reasons why people get into UFOs is because they've had some kind of experience. And I guess in the same way that if you'd had some kind of paranormal ghost type experience, you might be into that as well. I get kind of frustrated that UFOs get lumped with werewolves, Dracula and things like that. For the simple reason is that that's all fiction. But I don't deal in fiction, I deal in evidence. Yeah, so when I look at the subject of UFOs, I only look at it through the eyes of an experienced police officer. And I have the ability to say, that cuts the mustard, that doesn't. Do I believe that UFOs are real, as in extraterrestrial? Yes, so let's get that out of the way. Do I believe that UFOs are extraterrestrial and visiting the Earth now? Yes, so let's get that out of the way. Okay, so I'm telling you up front that my beliefs are absolutely strong. But where do those beliefs come from? And this is the key. I will say to you that I based it not only on a personal experience that I had at 15, which I shall discuss in a bit, but also the fact that when I studied the subject, I'm now 51, so when I've studied the subject for the last 36 years, it strikes me, if you look at pilot cases, military and commercial, astronauts, cosmonauts who've gone on the record, air traffic controllers, sonar operators, radar operators, observer corps, scientists, and many senior military generals, admirals, colonels who've gone on record saying these things are real, then I think we should be listening. Okay? And I'll talk about it. I've just got to switch this on, and hopefully this will work. Oh! And it does. Okay. All right. So that's my background. So I think I am qualified to talk to you about what evidence is, because if I don't know what evidence is as a policeman, I should be shot. Shouldn't I? If I'm going to talk to you about evidence, then you should know that I know what evidence is. Otherwise I can't talk about evidence. So we have to talk about evidence. Okay, the lecture is going to cover 4 things. Well, it's actually going to cover 5 things now, because I've added a 5th one. It doesn't know. Right. And it's going to be how the database came into how it originated, a review of some of the cases. There's too many to go through them all. We'll be here until tomorrow at 6 in the morning. I guess you don't want to do it. I will do some conclusions, some statistical work. I'm not a big lover of statistics because the police can manipulate statistics like anybody else can. Yeah? But there are some important statistics that do stand out. I'll talk about the future and where I see the database going. But also, if we get time, I'm going to add a couple of daytime video sequences to you that I think you'll like, because presumably you all want to come here and see UFOs. Well, that's the idea. Okay. As I've just said to you, for me, the evidence of ET comes in the form of high caliber witness categories. That's not to say that a member of the public cannot have a brilliant sighting. You can. But in terms of the media, you're not worth the paper it's written. And that's a sad fact. And very rarely are pilots, very rarely are astronauts. But in terms of trying to get some credibility within the media, within governments, in these high caliber witness categories, I think we stand a chance of trying to persuade people that to take this subject seriously and look at it. At the very least, look at it. So, pilots, military and commercial. How many people in this room knew that there are over 2,000 military pilots who have gone record having had UFO encounters? And military pilots tend to get them when they are sent and ordered up to chase UFOs. So straight away we get rid of a few myths, don't we? We're chasing Venus. Oh, come on, let's go chase it. Doesn't work like that. Radar plot. We've got an unknown object. Scrambled, 2 planes. Off you go. We have an airborne visual. Pilot can see it. We have a ground radar. Confirming pilot, object, ground. We now have sometimes multiple aircraft. Multiple ground and airborne radar. What more do you want? What more do you want? Oh, we're flying from London to New York and it's a bright, lovely day. We have perfect visibility. We can see for the next 100 miles. There's not a cloud in the sky. Oh, and it's a saucer next to me. Oh, shit. And he stays with the plane, not for 30 seconds like a ghostly encounter, but it'll fly with him for 200 miles. Wow. Seen by the aircrew, seen by some of the passengers, engineers, etc. Confirmed on radar. Often aircraft cross the Atlantic, seeing UFOs, and there's 3 or 4 aircraft going one way, 3 or 4 aircraft going the other way. So what, are they witnessing something real? Of course they are. And like I said to you at the start, when you get on a plane, you hand your life, and that's what we do. We don't think of it in that way, but it's not just a bit like getting on a bus, is it, with a plane? You know, we have to go high, we have to go low. We hand our life over to the pilot and his aircrew to get us from A to B. So when a pilot comes back and says, well, all my crew have just had that UFO following us for the last 2 hours, which has happened, we should really be listening to these people because they really ought to know what they're looking at. Because if they don't, they should be flying. Makes sense, really. Pilots, for me, would prove the case for UFOs as extraterrestrial on its own, because they know what they're looking at. Astronauts and cosmonauts, many astronauts, many cosmonauts have gone on record. Radar operators, sonar operators, all I said, military specialists, scientists, Observer Corps. Observer Corps, especially in the 50s, just after the Second World War, Observer Corps was really quite a detailed, high specialist kind of work, because you have literally seconds to make a determination of what that object is. And I can think of one wartime case, 1942, a British plane flying back a Lancaster bomber, which is a 4-engine bomber, one of the larger bombers of the Second World War. It's flying back from a raid over Germany to over France, and it then encounters at night a disc that they describe as 300 foot wide. It dwarfed their big bomber with a row of windows. They watch it for 5 minutes off their wingtip. All 8 aircrew see it. They all land and they all give statements individually saying we've seen this weird thing. And this is before the term UFOs, flying saucers, was even invented. This is 1942. 8 people, and they had to have aircraft recognition within seconds to determine whether they fire on it or not. But it's, woo, this is a bit different. Now what do we say with a multiple corroborated sighting from 1942 of a huge disc? We can't even build a 300-foot disc now. So it ain't stealth. Stealth's about 15 years in advance, but in the 1950s it would be out in 65. If it was 65, it would be out in 80. 80 being 1995. Do you see what I mean? The things that are seen then, there's a 15-year gap. But UFOs do not move like stealth, and I'll go on to characteristics in a moment. Why am I telling you all this first before I get to police officers? Because it's important that you understand a little bit about what UFOs are, what have been observed for the last 60 years, and what data has been produced that says we know a little bit more than what you're probably aware of. Not one UFO researcher, as much as he would like to, can produce the alien and go, yeah, they're real. They're here, there's the body. None of us can do that. However, and this is important, what we can do, after more than 60 years of research all around the world, we can make out certain characteristics that we would consider genuine UFO characteristics. When you apply that to the big jigsaw puzzle, and when I look at it as a police officer, many people have been convicted and even hanged in the past when there hasn't even been the body when it's been a murder. But the circumstantial pieces of the jigsaw are so many that the overall picture can be drawn and the jury makes a compelling decision based on the circumstantial evidence. If we now apply that context to UFOs and look at all these cases of pilots, astronauts, cosmonauts, etc., and look at the detail involved in some of those cases, the fantastic corroboration, telemetry data, radar data, visual, airborne radar, etc., the overall picture says it's highly compelling that UFOs are real, as in extraterrestrial, and they're here now. Unfortunately, you, as the public, I, as a researcher, don't get to see the best stuff, because the best stuff is hidden away. Genuinely believe that. Is there a media recovery? Absolutely. Easy to demonstrate, and I'll talk about that in a bit, but that comes from government-led, and really comes from America's lead from a decision that was taken in 1948. And that's why we all think it's a bit Looney Tunes. Yeah? Because from the day you are born, other than your parents, you are basically told through the media of news, paper, radio, TV, film, what to believe in. And it kind of indirectly becomes absorbed into your character. Yeah? Yeah, there's something out there. There's bound to be life in space, but hey, who knows? Most people have that kind of attitude now. But I'm actually saying, well, that's only because the media have pushed it down there. And you are not being told the best stuff, like I was told. Okay? So from my conclusion, I've already said it, absolutely, 100%. Okay, the database. Cutting a long story short, I had a sighting when I was 15. I was walking my then girlfriend home. We were walking down a long, narrow footpath. And on one side there was school fields. There was no lighting. And on the other side there were large garden allotments. I'm not sure what you would say in Danish, but gardens basically for people to work on, grow vegetables, etc. As we were watching, it was a summer's night, there was not a cloud in the sky, loads of stars out, and we suddenly see an object which I would describe as a big bright white light, no noise. We're walking that way, objects there, 60-degree angle, just been looking very slowly. We were on the path. As soon as it went past us, all the housing in the distance behind its flight path, power cut. Girlfriend, she becomes frightened. Rightly or wrongly, she associates the light with causing the power cut. She's frightened, visibly frightened. We watch the light. The light continues. Second power cut, behind its flight path. The object is moving very slowly, not a noise. So what I do, I have my bicycle with me. I said, get on the bike. I'm going to ride you really quick, drop you at your home, which was near the end of this alleyway. So that's what I do. Our house is in darkness. I then get on my bike, pedal like mad. I take a shortcut. The way, the path that we'd been on is a shortcut to get to my house. I end up going into a situation where I am on a main road and it's totally in darkness through a power cut. But in the distance, near the corner, I can see that the light is on. So I get to a situation where I go from darkness, and I'm on a bend near my home, and I go into light. I look over my right shoulder, and the object is behind me, because it's moving very slowly. So the shortcut has worked. It's just behind me, so that's why I'm in the power. I go around 2 corners, drop my bike outside my parents. It must be about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the evening. My parents are having a cup of tea, supper, and I say, come outside, I think there's going to be a power cut caused by this light. And they just look at me and go, what? Do they follow me? No, who would? I race through the hall, kitchen, back garden. I turn back to look at the house, to see the object coming over the rooftop. It's much higher altitude now. I put my arm up, kind of making a 90-degree angle. No sooner does that object go past me, and therefore my house and I am behind it, power cut. Entire area. Now I am a genius. There's no way I could predict a power cut, but from that point on I thought, from a second geographical position, I had moved to a second position, how could I predict a power cut? And at that point there I said, from second geographical position, that object must have had some interaction with the power grid. Yeah? How could I predict a power cut? I can't. So it must have been the light from a second position. So that's basically where my interest came. I followed the subject on and off for a long time afterwards. The only thing that you could do in 1975, just prior to the video age, was go look for books. There was no videos, DVDs, it's just books. So I went to my local second-hand bookshop, and sure enough, there are UFO books. And as luck would have it, the first book that I get is from a guy called Major Donald Keyhoe. Some of you may know the subject and have read a bit. For me, he is the father of UFOs, not Alan Hynek, because Keyhoe wrote 5 books. He was a military officer, and most of his friends were all admirals, colonels, generals, that kind of thing. Very qualified person, and basically I was fortunate to find that book, because in that book I straight away came across pilot reports, which impressed me enormously, but it also had a reference to the New York blackout in 1965, which is rumoured to have been triggered by UFOs. So straight away I'm thinking, wow, triggered? Maybe. Cutting a long story short then, I then went away and had life, had children, had relationships, etc., etc. Became a police officer in 1989, but it wasn't actually until 1995 when by chance I came across a glossy colour magazine in a big newsagent's at Leeds railway station, and it was called UFO magazine. Now, it was a brilliant magazine. The editor was a guy called Betz. He had a 3-day conference that ran for 22 years. He built it up from a single piece of paper into a world magazine that went to 40 countries. Sadly, he died of a brain hemorrhage when he was only 49. The magazine, sadly, was withdrawn. However, that was the guy, when I read this magazine and read about some of the books that were available, books that talked about pilot reports, military reports, documents that had been unearthed through the American Freedom of Information Act. I then began to reawaken my interest in the subject. I got all the books, I read them, and I felt that a growing sense of frustration, because I'm thinking all these pilot reports are great. You know, you've got Edgar Mitchell, the 6th man on the moon, saying, yeah, I've been told by senior military officials that UFOs have been visiting us for a long time and that it's all real. And I think, well, why isn't this on the 6 o'clock news? It should be. Because everybody says that as and when there is a major announcement that we are not alone, officially, i.e. through governments, that it will be the most significant moment in the development of human history. But I'm saying that reality is it's been going on for a long time. So I was getting frustrated. So I thought, well, what can I do? I'm a detective. Can't really go up to a group because I can't guarantee my hours every week. Doesn't work like that. If you're working on a rape inquiry, you work all the hours, etc., etc. So it had to be something that worked around me. And then I suddenly had an idea. I went to bed, had an idea, woke up after a dream, started a database. I'm not spiritual in any way, I'm an atheist. But had a dream, and the dream was, start a database of police officers. You know police officers. See if you can get an article in a magazine, UFO magazine, and hopefully people will come out of the woodwork, police officers, and tell me their stories. So that's what I did. I went to Graham Betz, who was the editor of the magazine, and said, I've had this idea, will you let me write an article to announce the launch of the database and put it in your magazine? And he went, yeah, okay then, because he wanted credible people. It was a scientifically based magazine. And he thought police officers would add a degree of credibility, or should add a degree of credibility. So basically that's what I did. I then, in January 2002, launched the database in the magazine, and it was a big thrill for me because I'd never written anything in my life. Not that I'd finished. And here I've got this article in a big, nice, glossy magazine that you could buy next to Vogue and everything. I'm thinking, well, this is good. But it was a big thrill. But the point is, it was launched publicly in that, and within 2 weeks, I got about 3 police officers coming towards me, retired with stories of what had happened to them. So straight away, I knew that I was onto something. Now, let's put these statistics. I've just been working on an annual report. I've been doing this now for 9 years. I do an annual report. I've now just done the 9th annual report, and let's tell you some statistics. I started the database with 6 cases involving 12 officers. I now have 425 cases involving 903 British police officers. 903. That's quite a lot. So we're going to look at some of those cases. So sheer frustration is what got me in. It caters for 2 types of sighting. An on-duty sighting made by a police officer, he's in his patrol car, that kind of thing, and he sees it, but also off-duty. Because that police officer is trained to record things in a chronological police manner that he would read back in court. So when he's off-duty, does he change brain? No, he doesn't. So his off-duty encounter is just as valid. Obviously the on-duty sightings are better because it's in uniform, etc., etc. And there's more multiple officers. But the off-duty sighting is still valid because it's the same pair of eyes, and he would still write it down in his pocketbook. He would still relay it back to somebody as if he was going in court, because that's what we're trained to do. He would look at height, distances. They know about perceptions of people and mistakes that people make in perception. Still as valid. When I started the database, they all took fun out of me. They did. And I knew they would, because police officers tend to rib each other quite a lot. We have a strange sense of humour. When you go to a car crash and people are dead and in bits, you kind of develop a unique sense of humour. It's a black sense of humour, and it's a reflex to deal with it. And it may well apply to nurses, I guess doctors, paramedics, that kind of thing. Firemen. They see some pretty horrible things. So as a reflex, we tend to have this kind of what we would call black humour. We laugh at things that we shouldn't have. But it's a reflex, basically. And so they said, beam me up, Scotty. Any reference to Star Trek? They were laughing at me. My inspector's an alien. Nanu, Nanu, for those of Mork and Mindy fame, ever remember that? Take me to your leader. All the things I expected. But the good news is that after that, then the real report started to come. That's just the nature of the way we are with each other. So what I'm going to do shortly is start to look at a selection of some of the cases. There will be a mixture of on and off duty cases, and I'll mention what would have been a major breakthrough case had it not got away. Before we look at cases, I have to give you a bit of a history lesson about what we're looking for, because many of the things that we relate to these police sightings will become common themes. 4 general types of UFO seen. Disc, triangle, what were the other 2? Cigar. Sphere. This is an important thing now. After 64 years of UFO research worldwide, we can draw these genuine UFO characteristics of flight. And this is why it's not stealth. The absence of sound, generally. Sometimes there is a high-pitched whine at close quarters. The ability to stop and hover. Silence. The ability to make right angle turns. 90-degree turns. Stealth camera. The ability to make reverses. Planes can't do that. Can they do that? No. The ability to make instant acceleration and stop. Kind of like Star Trek. Vertical ascent. Many UFOs are seen to be there. Pilots sent up to intercept and then they got 60, 70,000 feet. Similarly, they've been seen to go. Okay? And the last one is one that I've added in the last 3 or 4 years. There's now quite a lot of UFO clips, daylight clips, that appear to show objects appearing from nowhere, that then they're there, and then they fade out and go. And also a lot of the police cases that I'll refer to, keep your eye out for the ones that say they just vanish in front of them and they arrive like turning on a light bulb. So they're not there, they don't come left, they don't come right, they don't come down, they just are there. Okay? Okay, my oldest case. Is it a genuine UFO? I don't know. Because it's 1901, everybody's dead. I assume. 21st of December. That's freaky. Right, 21st of December, 1901. I included because it was written in the newspaper, it named the 2 officers, P.C. Johnson, P.C. Clark. I've included it because it mentions a green glow, and we'll talk about other police UFO sightings with green glows, so that's important. No noise, low altitude, cigar shaped. Cigar shaped being one of the 4 shapes. Now some of you will be thinking, this could be an early airship. Well, I've researched that. And as far as I can see, that in Yorkshire in 1901, there are no airships flying. There's certainly no airships flying with a green glow. And if we think back to our pictures of the first airships, they've got an undercarriage underneath, and they make one hell of a noise because they've got a big plug. We're talking silence. So, is it for certain? Can't say. But it has some of the, what I would call the genuine characteristics that make it an interesting case. And it's gone down as an unidentified object. The second oldest case, I've only just added this. Again, exactly the same criteria. P.C. Kettle is one of the 2 officers. Cigar-shaped object moved at high speed. The original airships moved really very slowly. They were powered by small motors that made a hell of a lot of noise, and they literally 5, 10 miles an hour. This is described as moving at high speed. Could it be an airship? Could be, but my research says so far that in 1909, in Peterborough, down towards London, that there are no airships. Okay, so let's now move to the modern area. 1957. How many people in the room are aware that UFOs come in and out of water? Stick your hand up if you are. Oh yeah, a few of you, thank you. Right, USOs. There are many, many cases from military sources in documentation released through the Freedom of Information Act that near US destroyers, aircraft carriers, objects have suddenly emerged from the water and gone flying away, as you do. We can't do that yet. We can do a Polaris missile, or a missile that comes from a submarine and bursts into the air, but not an object that then sits and flies around the aircraft carrier. Those kind of cases exist, documented cases with military witnesses. So this is a good case. 3 police officers in uniform see a UFO emerge from water and fly off. Not still. Okay, this is a very famous case. This is a guy called Colin Perks. Now, it was only, I generally only put on multiple officer cases, but this is a very famous case. In the British archive records, there's a file over 20 pages thick on this guy. Very credible policeman, well respected, and at 4 o'clock in the morning, basically, he is rattling doors. He's doing what uniformed police officers do all over the world. They check doors, see if there was anybody trying to break in, look for burglars, etc. He sees an object 9 meters. He sees this object, typical flying saucer, green glow. So keep your eye out for green glows. All right? Now the interesting thing about this is he hears a bit of a high-pitched whine, but he's watching the object, there's nobody around, and suddenly it shoots off at high speed. This case came to me, it was well known already, but somebody contacted me who knew him and said he's still alive, he'll talk to you about this. I said, oh great. This guy who contacted me was another police officer who'd been on duty when he comes back into the police station. And this guy says he was white, he'd seen something, he'd like seen a ghost, he was absolutely shaking. They sent 2 uniformed police officers out to where he had his sighting, and they come across a fine powder on the ground, like a glass-like powder. Unfortunately, what those 2 police officers didn't do is take samples, but because by the time they'd gone back to get the samples, it had evaporated and gone. But they've gone on record, and I spoke to one of those 2 officers that said he saw like a glass-like substance on the ground. It's rare, but that has been heard around the world from time to time. This one is an officer that approached me directly, and basically he's on patrol in uniform with a colleague. They're in a car, they're in a rural location, and they're just passing a small airport called Woolsgate Airport near Bristol when they see this. It's blacked out on there, but that is the actual road and a superimposed object above it. All you can see is the white light. But basically there is a photograph there. But basically what they describe is they are there, they're driving along, and suddenly the car engine stalls, cuts out for no reason. The lights go off. It's a bit like the case of Count, not the third count, and he's in his truck. Basically, it go out, the engine goes, the lights go. Suddenly, this huge object that they describe as 90 meters wide, hovering at about 50 meters high, is just there, above the road. The car's gone dead, they're there, as you would, for 10 seconds. And then suddenly, gone. As soon as it goes off, the car engine starts, and the headlights come back on. Now, for anybody that knows anything about UFOs, many, many cases where there has been some kind of EM, electromagnetic interference with nearby objects. So a very good case, corroborated case. This case is very famous in England because basically 2 uniformed officers chase what they see as a Christmas tree star. I'll show you this little video clip of this. The officer's been interviewed from 1967. But they basically chased it. They originally saw it just above trees as they're driving on the road, and the object starts going off, and they follow it at up to 90 miles per hour, as I've got there, 140 kilometres per hour. And this lasts for 20 kilometres. Okay, so this is not something sudden. And these are the 2 officers. And this is a clip. With a bit of skill now, I should get my mouse back, and there we go.
Copenhagen with PC Roger Willie and PC Clifford Waycott. Case of Oakhampton were out on night duty patrolling the A3072, Hatherley to Holsworthy Road. Precisely 1 minute past 4 o'clock this morning, they sighted an object 400 yards away from them and at treetop level. They reported immediately to Oakhampton Police Station, where further men were brought out. There was no question whatsoever that this was a picking of the imagination. It was definitely there. It was definitely either manned by some sort of being or remotely controlled. It was definitely being controlled to view our tower.
You had the feeling it was watching you.
Yeah.
Now, in isolation, when you have a case like that, you would think that these guys are just going to be crazy. But all over the southwest, Bristol, Cornwall, Devon, there was a whole host of sightings of a similar object. Yeah? So they are not uncommon, and it's a very famous case. There were literally hundreds of sightings by members of the public, but they had that sighting. Hopefully we shall now get this one going back. This is a good case. This is a guy that came to me directly. And this is interesting because he's on duty in uniform, and basically he hears on the police radio that people are seeing strange objects in the sky. So he basically gets told, keep an eye out for something strange moving towards your location. And this is what he sees. He sees 9 objects that he describes as like pearl white objects in a V-shaped formation, an echelon formation. Afterwards, he finds out that he and 5 other uniformed police officers, each in different locations, each in different geographical locations, proving that they were all looking at the same object from different geographical areas. They're all told to report the next day to the main police headquarters, where they are interviewed individually, statements are taken, and somebody in plain clothes, who they assume is from the Ministry of Defence or from the Air Force, takes their statements. They're never told what. After the incidents, they are then told by senior police officers, you do not ever talk about this again. Why, if there's nothing to this? This one again is another officer that approached me, PC Robert Thomas. This is in West Yorkshire, and he sees a UFO that's absolutely huge dimensions. And there's a story to this one, because it's 30 metres high, 15 metres wide, and it's got a row of windows, and it's low to the ground. It's literally just off the ground. He's driving his car, he comes up to a roundabout, a circle, in the road, and then suddenly it's on one side. It's just hovering there, no noise. He watches it for 5 minutes, and then it shoots off at incredible speed over towards the city of Wakefield. He doesn't report it, because he fears ridicule. The interesting thing is that when he gets back to the police station, somebody from the control room sees him and says, hey, you haven't seen anything strange whilst you've been out, have you? And he went, why? Well, no, this milkman said he'd seen some big diamond thing. And unfortunately, he didn't have the bottle then to say, oh, well, actually, I saw that too. And he didn't. And when he spoke to me, he said, one of the things I've always regretted all my life is not having the strength of character to say to that control room bloke, yeah, I saw it too. And that milkman was not mad. But of course, we're led to believe through the media that anybody who believes in UFOs is a bit tapped. There's nothing to it. It's not quite like that in reality. Another guy who came to me, this guy worked a long time ago on one of the docks where ships come in and unload goods, containers, and he saw a bright white light, no noise, move slowly towards him and stop over an amenity block right in front of him. This is his drawing on one of my sighting report forms. And it stops above this amenity block in the middle of the picture. And you can see the track of the object, and then suddenly it shoots off. He was on his own. He didn't report it, and thought he was on his own, and he wasn't going to say anything. But fortunately for him, in another area of the dock, away from him, i.e. from a different geographical location, one of the officers came up to him at the end and said, hey, you didn't see anything strange, did you? Well, actually I did. And they both seen the same thing at the same time. So there was corroboration to that sighting. Another officer that approached me, he's in uniform, in rural location. He's rattling doors checking that buildings are locked, in a little village, and suddenly he sees this. You can't really see with the lights on, but you've got, at the top of the photograph, you've got 3 green spheres. This is just me playing with paint shot, but there you go. You end up with 3 green spheres. That's the actual location where it took place, and I've just added green spheres. And he said they were coming towards him in total silence, and he's thinking, that's a plane. That's got to be a plane. You know, it's not a plane. It's not a plane. And then suddenly, as the objects get close to him, they then do a right angle turn and go at that speed. The thing is, why are all these police officers coming to me? Are they going to become rich and famous and make loads of money? No. So why are they doing it? Because something happened to them that burns away inside of them, and for many, many years they've had nobody to report these sightings to. And the main reason why police officers don't come forward like other professions is a fear of ridicule and a perceived risk to their career. Not that anybody would ever probably say, you didn't get the job because you're a UFO. But it kind of has this inference that you'll go for the job and behind closed doors somebody will say, that's the UFO. So hence why pilots don't come forward, etc., etc. It can cost you your career or a perceived risk to your career. This is a very famous case in England, for those of you that look at UFOs and have studied it for quite a while. May be aware of this case. In 1978, 2 uniformed officers, a sergeant and a PC. This guy in the picture is Tony Dodd. He actually retired after 25 years of being a police sergeant, after a long career, and then he became a UFO researcher, a bit like me, but he did it really when he retired. I do it even though I'm still a serving police officer. But his first sighting, and he had several more, was of this object. And the thing is, this was just above his police car. Now, when people talk about close proximity cases, it's very interesting, because for me, they were in a rural location, suddenly see this object, they stop, and the object comes and goes over the police car, and it's literally not far above this roof. Can they be mistaken what they're looking at that speed? When it's hovering above the police car? Maybe twice the height of this roof? I would argue no. What motivation is for that officer to come forward and make this story up? No. Why? Because it's real. They see a structured object with windows hovering above the police car in total silence. Wow. Hard to believe, isn't it? But these kind of sightings often occur. If there was one sighting on its own, you'd have to just logically say the guy must be insane. But when you get 10, 20, 50, 100, 200, 400, when do we start kind of saying, well, maybe they're actually telling the truth. The weight of the evidence is coming to our side. This is one of my favourite sightings, because this is 1978. There are 3 police officers in uniform, 2 police cars have stopped. They're having a chat to each other early hours of the morning. They're in countryside. There is no street lights anywhere. It's a rural location. Way up in the distance, they suddenly see a flash, just literally for a couple of seconds. They look, it's a long way off, and they can't determine what it is, and then it goes on. Forget all of it. However, 5 minutes later, and then an object appears in front of them that's literally 100 metres away from them. It's 100 metres off the ground, and basically it's the size of a football field. The width of the football field, and shining a beam of light down. That's the guy, Eric Raymond, shining a beam down, scanning the terrain, total silence for 5 minutes. They go for the main radio, can't get through. 3 of them are watching it, no noise, it hasn't arrived from anywhere, it's just there. Remember the other sighting, the police, big object seen above the 2 by the airport? Exactly the same. It suddenly is there. They watch it for 5 minutes, it's a huge object, no noise, beam down across the terrain, and then suddenly minutes, gone. Doesn't go left, doesn't go up, doesn't go right. It just blinks off. Remember the physical characteristics of what I think are genuine UFOs? The last one that I've added, the ability to render themselves invisible when they want. Great case. The other thing there is he said that the huge object is surrounded by smaller objects. About 6 smaller objects are flying around the big object. It kind of sounds like Star Trek and the mothership kind of scenario, but in reality we've got 3 police officers corroborating such an incident. Is it on its own? No, it's not. We end up in this situation where many, many cases are like this. I'm going to stop at this point now, I think really, because Alan Godfrey, this guy, how many in the room have heard of a famous British sighting involving a policeman called Alan Godfrey? 1, 2. All the exopolitic members at the back of the room. Okay. What I would have to say is this case, we're going to have a break now, because you sat there very patiently. We're going to have a break. But basically, this is one of Britain's most famous police sightings. And what makes it famous is because it's Britain's first abduction case. So not only is it a police officer, but it's an alien abduction story. And we'll talk about that later. Because you could talk about this for an hour and a half. And I spent 18 months researching his case and wrote a screenplay about this guy because of what happened to him afterwards. The way the police force turned on him when the national and world media were told about it, and his life was made to hell by the police. And he was literally hounded out of the job over a number of years. So that's the real story there. But anyway, we're going to have a break now. Thank you so much. Stay attention. How long's the break for? Here? 20 minutes. 25 minutes, I believe, maximum. Come back for part 2. Thank you.
I think we'll crack on for the simple reason that I'm hoping at the end to show you some UFO clips. And there will be a couple of clips coming up very shortly of a cylindrical object in broad daylight on mobile phone, good quality, very interesting movement of the object. Thank you. Right, we're officially back, we're on. Welcome back. Right, Alan Godfrey case. I think it's only the exopolitic group members that were aware of this case. I did say it was an important case, and it is certainly in British history because it's referred to as Britain's first abduction case. Now, whatever you think about the abduction phenomena, i.e. alleged alien abduction, many people will run a mile at the thought of alien abduction and the subject of it. Because it's a bit distasteful. Is it real? Sadly it is. Because I've talked to a lot of people who are serious researchers. I've also talked to a doctor called Roger Lear, who's a foot surgeon, who has the strange hobby, for want of a word, over and above his work, of removing what he considers alien implants from people's bodies, who claim to have been abducted at various times in their life. And what I would have to say is that there's quite a lot of interesting evidence that says that these are real objects, some kind of tracking objects. They tend to all be the size of a pea. When you take them out, there's no sign of entry, there's no infection, which is odd. When you take them off, you can't cut them. The outer membrane, there's an outer membrane that you can't cut with a scalpel. They have to be taken off very carefully. And inside, there's an oil that's strange. It's been identified, but it's terrestrial, but never seen in the compounds that it's found in inside this object. All the elements, there's metals inside that are all pressed together, and they're not found naturally occurring. They're all known metals, so there's nothing new, but they're compressed in a way that we are not aware of in terms of production. They react to magnets in a strange way. Sometimes some little antennas come out that have been seen, all on video. And that's a guy called Roger Lear. Right. The reason why I mention abductions is because this is an abduction case. It's a case that I researched for 18 months. And the reason why I researched it for 18 months is that I live in the county of West Yorkshire and he lives in the county of West Yorkshire, so it seemed when I started the database it'd be pretty silly for me not to go to this famous guy who's at this sighting. But basically this is a very reluctant officer in terms of he's a no-nonsense, you know, you can't mess him around, he doesn't suffer fools gladly, he's a straight-up guy, well respected at the time. And basically he is driving his police car on his own, and he's just about to turn right onto a housing estate when suddenly something catches the corner of his eye. It's 5:10 in the morning, there's no traffic on this road that he's on. Something catches his eye and he thinks a bus is skidding up the road. It's just like the corner of his eye. So he cancels his indicator, he doesn't turn right, he goes straight on. Within seconds he suddenly realises that he's looking at this. He said, that is blocking the road. It's 5 feet off the ground, perhaps 1 to 2 metres off the ground. He says the bottom half is rotating anti-clockwise. The top half appears to have some kind of darkened windows, doesn't see anything inside. Because it's November, there are trees nearby, and because of the centrifugal force of the rotating object, leaves are gathering in a circle beneath the object that was just hovering in silence. And he will often say that it was so real that if he had a brick, it would have gone bang if he'd have thrown it at it. Because he got within the back of this room, 30 feet. So he drove to within where I am now, to the guy at the back of the room. That's close. No noise. 20 feet, as he describes, by 14 feet. So literally 4 metres by 3 metres. Object blocking the road, low to the ground. Initially, he goes for his main radio, his personal radio, it's dead. He then goes for the vehicle radio, it's dead. He then has a clipboard next to him with some writing material, which he can sketch the drawing. He sketches that drawing. He then decides to get out of the vehicle and approach the object. As he approaches the object, he suddenly thinks, this is not a good idea. And he starts to walk back to the police car. He's just about to get into the police car when the next thing he remembers, he's driving down the road. Suddenly there's like a jump in time. He's suddenly in the police car. He's suddenly driving 100 yards further up the road. Object's gone and he's good. Where's it gone? Spins the car around, goes back and finds a circular patch of leaves where the object had been. And because it'd been raining during the night, it was noticeably drier underneath where the object had been. He drives to the police station, which is about a half mile away. He sees an officer, one of his colleagues, a guy called PC Malcolm Agley. He says, Malcolm, get in the car, you're never going to believe this. I've just seen a flying saucer. Get away, get away. No, seriously, I have. Get in the car. He drives him back, and that officer, who I've spoken to, Malcolm Agley, corroborates the fact that there was the circular patch. The craft had gone, the object had gone, but there was this noticeably drier patch where he said the object had been, and that kind of corroborates what Alan was saying, that something was there in the hovering. The interesting thing about this is when this happens, there are a number of things that happens that because of time I can't really go into. I could spend a good couple of hours on this case alone, but literally, cutting a long story short, what happens is his colleague says to him, we're best be getting off now. It's late, it's 6:10. He goes, what do you mean it's 6:10? He says, well, just come out, it must be 5:20. No, he says, it's 6:10, it was shift change at 6 o'clock. And he's thinking, what? For him, he has lost some time. He can't understand it, he doesn't think of it as missing time, but he's just, it's odd. And what he also finds is in his boots, his police boot, he had a split in a new pair of boots that he went out in that night, and there was a big split under his foot, about 2 inches in length, that he doesn't know how he got the split. And when he took his sock off, when he got home, there was a red mark that size under where the split had been in his boot, and it was itching, and he didn't know why. He went to the doctor, gave him some cream, and after about a week, it went away. Didn't really think too much about it. But he was puzzled about this time distortion. For him, it was 5:20 at the latest, but in reality, it was 6:10, and he was like missing 30 or 40 minutes. He wasn't going to do anything about this at all. A week later, he released the story in the local media, in the paper. And he got a bit of ribbing from people that knew him in the village, kind of thing. But it all kind of died down. About a month later, a UFO researcher called Harry Harris, who was quite well known in the late 80s, early 90s, went to see him, funnily enough, with a Chief Inspector police officer who had that sighting as well, a guy called Chief Inspector Collinson. And they went to see him and they said, "Look, Alan, is there anything odd about your experience?" And he said, "The only thing that was odd is that I couldn't understand why it was 6:10. I thought it was only 5:30. So cutting a long story short, Harry Harris, who was a solicitor, he had his own business, private practice, said, "Look, I know a couple of professors at Manchester University," and he didn't live too far away from Manchester University. "Would you allow me to pay for you to be hypnotised, just to see if we can retrieve any memories, any hidden memories?" And he went, "No, not interested." So again, if this guy is trying to make famous or look for notoriety, he wouldn't have said that. So they went away, disappointed. They went back to him about a month later and said, "Look, hopefully you might reconsider." But because he'd had some kind of nightmares, he was a bit confused. He said, "Okay then." Didn't know what to expect. They went to see a guy called Professor Jaffe at Manchester University, who was not told it was anything to do with UFOs. It was basically a clear brief, nothing mentioned about UFOs, just investigate this officer's mind. He seems to have some blocked memories. Can you put him under hypnosis and see what comes out? On the first session, they clipped him up to heart monitors and devices to monitor his blood pressure and things like that. It wasn't recorded the first session. When they did the first session, they're going through it, he gets hypnotised, and then this story emerges. When he went back to the police car, and just before he had that jump, when he's suddenly down the road and the object's gone, what comes out under hypnosis is that when he goes back to the police car, because he's a bit frightened, he's changed his mind about going too close, he goes back, he's just about to get in the police car, he's engulfed by a really intense bright white light, and he then finds himself on some kind of bed in a room with small creatures 3 to 4 feet high putting some kind of machinery on his legs. Now, this is before the X-Files. This is really before Communion, the book Communion by Ridley Schreiber and the iconic alien grey head people may think about. This kind of predates that. And basically, small creatures are putting stuff on his legs. Doesn't know where he is. He describes those objects not as what may be referred to as greys now, with big bug eyes, etc., the kind of mythology that's now in UFO. He describes them in his own terms as lamp heads, bulb heads. But actually, in his own words, and it predates it, it's not a bad description of what we now refer to as the alien grey. Okay? Which kind of sounds like science fiction. This is under hypnosis. Is it evidence? No. It's anecdotal information. But it's interesting. And basically what happens is he then sees a humanoid figure with a beard and a skull cap of some description and a gown that talks to him telepathically, because he says he's not moving his lips. and kind of tells him that he's going to be okay. At that point there, the professor starts asking him questions about the equipment on his legs. Okay? Describe what these creatures, these things are doing to your legs. What machinery, describe the machinery. And at that point there, as if there is some kind of rejection element built into his response, his heart monitor starts racing, his blood pressure starts going up, and he becomes really distressed. So much so that the professor goes, whoa, I'm going to stop this because it's getting a bit dangerous. So they end the session then. They end the session then, and the professor is absolutely astounded. He's never heard anything, he didn't know, he's not interested in UFOs, never heard anything like it in his life. Other than a couple of cases in America, the most famous case being the Barney and Betty Hill case in 1961, which is an early abduction case, and the Anthony Villalobos case in South America in 1957. Abductions was, other than sort of the Adamski type contactee element, which is, some people believe is real, other people don't. Personally, I am not sure either way. But basically, it was fairly rare, the abduction scenario in 1980. And certainly in Britain. So basically, the professor goes, this is weird. I've never heard anything like this before. I don't want to tell Alan what came out of that interview. I want to try to repeat the experiment. And that's what scientists do, isn't it? They're trying to get evidence and repeat the experiment. So what he says, I'm going to ask him if he'll go to another professor, which is called Professor Jaffe. Professor Blair was the first one, Professor Jaffe was the second one. 3 months later, he goes in. This time it's all on video. He's all hooked up. Exactly the same story occurs. And again, the professor is not giving any kind of UFO brief. He basically says, I'm referring this case to you. Will you examine him and try to put him under hypnosis and see if you can retrieve any memories? Okay? Same story comes out. When questions about the equipment, anything of detail, he starts to have an adverse reaction. The whole hypnosis session lasts about 45 minutes. Cut a long story short, 3 months later he then goes back to the first professor, same story on video. 3 months later, so this is a year down the line, he's had 4 sessions, 3 months apart, the last 3 all on video, same story, back to Professor Jaffe. Exactly the same, no inconsistencies. Is it evidence? No. It's anecdotal information about something that may have happened. But what we know now, after 30 years of abduction research, is that there were actually quite a lot of elements there. How many times, if anybody's actually read about abductions, do people find themselves in a room being examined by small creatures who are like the workers that are often described as 3 feet high with big heads, big black eyes, very spindly bodies, all kind of close encounters kind of thing. But that scenario is regular, and it happens all over the world. Abduction scenarios actually happen in third world countries where they don't have TV, where they don't have radio, where they don't even have any kind of interaction with what we would consider books, magazines, to create a story. And they come out with the same stories. So it kind of lends weight that it happens to all over and is a real phenomenon. He basically wished that this never happened to him. For the simple reason is that a year afterwards, and because he had done sessions on hypnosis on video, a journalist with the Daily Mirror, which is a big national newspaper in England, published a story about Alan Godfrey and got some clips from the video. And it basically went worldwide. And then what happened to him then was that the police force that he was with, West Yorkshire Police, kind of like ostracised him and made his life very difficult. He was told that he was being transferred to another police station for career development, yet his colleagues were told he was being moved because he was stealing uniform. He was never arrested, never interviewed. He was taken for psychiatric evaluation under the guise of a medical, once-a-year medical. They really put him through the mill. He was hounded, and eventually after 5 years. He retired on ill health, but right up until his retirement, life was very difficult for him. The police force really turned his attention, drove him to the brink of suicide. He went up onto the moors with a shotgun and he was going to kill himself because he was ridiculed and he was in the glare of publicity all the time. His family and his children were taunted in the street. So that's a real human interest story. That's the real story of Alan Godfrey, what happens to him afterwards, and the way the media nearly broke him. It's a great story. Wrote a screenplay. Right, so when we now look back at abductions, it often invariably involves what's called missing time. A period, 10, 15, 20 minutes of missing time. Don't be ever confused that you've got to be in your bed and asleep. So people say, oh, it's just sleep paralysis, things like that. People can be driving the cars. Multiple people can be abducted driving the cars. People can be stood by a bus stop and be abducted. Some people don't. Some people have recollections without ever need to have an hypnosis session. Often there are cases where there are multiple people, multiple abductions who all remember the same thing. So it's not just in bed making it all up. We also know that what happened to him in terms of some of the physical effects, the mark, the boot. A lot of people who were abducted claim to have had some kind of physical examination. Often there will be a group of dots, like pinpricks in patterns on hands or around the body. Often there are what's called scoop marks, little marks, deviations in the body that weren't there before. Little things like that. And don't forget, he had a split boot and he had a mark under his foot that he couldn't explain. Might be nothing, but when we look back in the context of what we've learned 30 years later, he kind of followed a lot of similar patterns. That he had some kind of physical mark on his body. And don't forget, they were messing with his legs and putting something on his legs. So who knows? It's a very famous case because it's Britain's first abduction case. This is a good case that has come to me recently. Basically, what's good about this is this guy was a village policeman up in the mountains in Wales, in a little village, and they look over next to a lake, and in the distance there is a big nuclear power station generating electricity for the area. They see that object. He and his wife's not a police officer, but she sees the same, and then that object moves over to that big, it's a bit faint, but you can just see a white building in the photograph in the distance. That's a big, huge nuclear power station now. It's now doesn't operate, but it was then. And he stays hovering over that nuclear power station for several minutes. If anybody knows their UFO history, there is a big interaction between UFOs and nuclear weapons and nuclear power. They are interested in power and our development of nuclear power. Many, many sightings from the 40s onwards. Big correlation between UFOs being seen above nuclear power plants, nuclear facilities, military. And if you even think back to the famous Roswell case in 1947, is it a coincidence that that was the first atomic bomber group anywhere in the world that they suddenly turn up? I think they are monitoring what we're doing. This is an interesting case. We talked about green spheres and green glows. Well, this officer, he's still quite traumatised about this, but he did speak to me, and that's him on the left. And interestingly, the other officer that was with him, he wouldn't go to the lecture that I did there a few years ago. He basically is so upset by the event that he doesn't want to talk about it. Doesn't say it doesn't happen, but he says, I don't want to talk about it. Okay, but they're driving along a 2-lane road. So in England we would say dual carriageway, 2 lanes on either side of a central reservation. No traffic, they go in to work onto a night shift. When suddenly, what pulls alongside of them is a green sphere the size of a car. No noise. Whoa. That then overtakes and then shoots off over a farmer's field. weird, eh? No wonder some people don't want to talk about it. That guy is still traumatised by it. I've spoken to many officers who've never even told their wives, partners, about some of their experiences. They've told maybe the colleague that was with them, they've talked about it, but they are so frightened of ridicule that they don't come forward. So when they find out about me, they ring me up, and it's almost like a cathartic experience where they're almost in tears. I wanted to tell somebody about this for so long. I'm not crazy, I'm not crazy. I said, no, you're not crazy. I am. But this is another case. This is a good case. Recent case, 1984, Metropolitan Police Officer, early hours, on patrol, 2 uniforms, on mobile. They see a large triangular object. Since the early 80s, there's been a proliferation in triangular-shaped objects. And we'll talk about stealth later. All right? This is an object triangular in shape, 3 times the size of a football field. 3 times. And where they see it is actually over football fields. So that's how he guesses its size. They're looking across at some football fields with this object. And at one point it goes above their police car and it blacks the sky out. It is that big. It's low to the ground. 3 times the size of a football field. 7 to 8 minutes duration. That's a long time, isn't it? If I was to speak silently now, just 8 minutes would seem like a lifetime. It's a long time. So that's a good sighting. He reported it over the air. I'm looking at a weird object. When he came back, do you want to make an official police report? No, we'll leave it. Because they don't want to get tired as being some kind of UFO. That's the perception. This guy, traffic car, he and another officer are parked up on a motorway. You know, like motorways, watch for people speeding. He's parked up when suddenly a missile-shaped object, I think 9 meters, just flies low next to them, parallel with the road. Can you imagine? You sat there, minding your own business, talking to your colleague, and then suddenly a 9-meter missile, low to the ground, just goes past you. No noise, windows down. We cannot do that. Stealth cannot do that. Why would stealth fly along motorways? Are there any missiles? No. This is a good one because it's radar confirmed. People say, oh, there's no evidence of UFO. There's no such thing as evidence. It's all rubbish. Manchester Airport picked up an unidentified, uncorrelated target that is stationary on their radar. They informed the police, the local police at Kidlington. Can you send 2 officers out to a high vantage point because we have a stationary object that's on our radar, we can't explain it, can somebody go check it out? 2 officers go out there, no doubt thinking this is a load of rubbish, but they get there and they see an object in the position where it's supposed to be, from a high vantage point, and it's shining beams down to the ground, multicolours, for 2 hours. Not 2 minutes, not 2 seconds, 2 hours. Now you would have thought that somebody would rang the television people to get your ass down there at 2 hours, but they don't. But the superintendent in charge of those officers says, no, this is a real story, this is a real event, my officers, I will corroborate what they said, they're good officers, he's backing them up. It's pretty impressive. Radar. This, in terms of Britain, is one of Britain's most famous UFO nights, because literally in over 6 counties of England, UFOs are seen by multiple police officers and members of the public, but interestingly by police officers all over the place, as the object, 2 objects are seen flying parallel with each other in silence, low to the ground, about 1,000 feet off the ground. 2 bright lights as it makes its way over 6 counties, 6 regions of England. Now the number is up to 24 different police officers from different police forces, different locations geographically, witnessing this. Very important sighting. And there's a guy in England who was at the UFO desk called Nick Pope. He was at the UFO desk between 91 and 94. It's one of the few decent things that he did, but he did a study of this case, and he actually kind of got the MOD to admit that an unknown object or unknown objects were operating in Britain's airspace, not on radar. However, that sighting was deemed as not of defence significance, which is kind of a bit weird, really. There's an unknown object flying above your skies. People are seeing it left, right, and centre, but it's of no significance. I'll tell you why I think it's of no significance later on. This is an interesting case because I think most people in England, here in Denmark, will have heard of the famous monument of Stonehenge. You know, the famous old monument. This officer, along with 11 other officers, was guarding the Stonehenge monument for the summer solstice. Yeah, the longest day of the year. And basically, they witness an object that does this. Right angle. Right angle. Silently across from one side of the horizon to the other. 12 officers see that. So it's all corroborated, making right angle turns. A bit like a castle wall. We can't do that. Nobody can do that. Good sight. This is an interesting one. In 1999, there is basically, there used to be, I'm sure you're aware, the IRA, troubles between, in Ireland, lots of bombs going on. It lasted about 30 years. Fortunately, that's all stopped. But this officer was an RUC officer, Royal Ulster Constabulary, and even when they were off duty during those troubled years that lasted about 30 years, all Royal Ulster Constabulary police officers carried a sidearm pistol because a lot of officers were unfortunately shot and killed. So they had a sidearm. And they come across, he and his wife come across this object hovering above the road. He tells his wife, stay in the car. He gets out and he walks directly underneath. And he's got his hand like that. And he's thinking, what am I going to do with this? And it's just hovering there in total silence. Huge object. 100 metres above the road. 300 feet. That's really low in a rural location. Object suddenly gone. This is interesting because a police helicopter and officers on the ground see a strange light. They report it. The helicopter sees this light as well. That's what's called a loose minute. It's under the Freedom of Information Act. It's a document that comes out. It's written between a civil servant, somebody who works for the government, to another civil servant. It's called a loose minute. About a credible witness, i.e. police, sighting, 3rd of November. It's actually 2003. It's not 1999 for some reason. Basically, what happens is the sighting occurs on the 17th of November, and it's reported as a credible witness. You've got a confirmation by officers on the ground, and you've got confirmation from a helicopter crew. They also made checks with a couple of radar stations at Swanwick and RAF Neatishead. It's not on radar, but we're looking at something. It's not on radar. The next day, just the 18th, one day later, somebody saying, doesn't matter that the police saw it, doesn't matter that it's not on radar, it's of no defence significance. How can they make a decision like that? If something is strange flying above your airspace, is that not of defence significance? Especially when we live in a world of terrorism as we do. If something is flying above a nuclear facility and stopped and hovered, is that not of defence significance? I beg to differ that it would be. But that's what governments will say. That's what the British government will say. This is a traffic clip to show you. This is a video clip of an actual UFO. This is a traffic car, and a lot of traffic cars have front-facing video cameras looking out through the windscreen. Don't be confused by the red light in the middle of the screen, that's just the red recording button. What you're looking for is, as the object is driving along, it will go around the bend of the road, and on the right hand side suddenly you'll see a bright light on the horizon. It's not the sharpest copy, but what the officer said he saw was 12 spheres, white in colour, all clustered together above a hill. Let's just run the clip. Because you can see actually the officer's driving along. That's the recording light in the centre of the road. He's going to bend round to the right. If you're watching the speed there, he's doing 48 miles an hour, 49, he's going round bend. Watch for a hill now. He says he sees, with better vision, obviously he was there, 12 spheres clustered together above the hillside. Watch his speed start to come down. What the hell is that? This is daylight. And he's slowing. And he watches it. And strangely, what happens is the object in broad daylight begins to blink out. It's there. It's not. It's there. It's not. It's there. And then it goes. And then he starts speeding up. He sees 12 white spheres. It's just an interesting clip.
Oh, there we go.
This is an interesting one again. Okay. This is a new case that's come to me. This is in Scotland, up in the hills. This is a black triangle UFO. This is the actual location. I've said to the officer, go back. He's a serving officer. Can you go back, take a photograph of the place where it happened? This is his photograph. So imagine over the hillside. There is no noise, 50-metre altitude, a black triangle in that photograph. And that's what he saw. Interesting with that one is he said that there was a kind of an interference. He started to develop a headache when the object is there. When the object goes away, the pain in his head goes. That's not very often heard. This is a really good case. It's got 2 video clips with it of a cylindrical object. I mentioned it earlier, it's telephone footage. It's good footage. It's clear, it's daylight. This object was seen to tumble for 30 minutes across the sky at a few thousand feet, maybe 5,000 feet. And so it's tumbling and tumbling. At one point, you will see in the first clip that the cylinder, which they describe as 90 to 150 metres in length, pretty big, is rotating on its own axis. It's in the sunlight. You can see at one point the sun glinting off it, and as it's turning, the light goes off it. So let's go next on. This is the first clip. And here we go. Watch the light fade off it. Upright. No obvious means of propulsion. Stay in the air. Okay? Bright, broad daylight. Let's go to the next clip. And play this clip. Watch now how this object is manoeuvring in the sky in this tumbling fashion. Captures part of that manoeuvre. 30 minutes going across the sky. What stays in the sky for 30 minutes? It's not the wind, it's not a balloon, it's dimensions. It's anywhere near right. 90 to 150 metres in length. Rarely do we get better footage than that of a cylindrical object. That's a photograph that he took. Not only did he get 2 mobile phone clips, he took some stills on his mobile phone. And as we can see, maybe if we put the lights down again, so there's 2 or 3 slides, because there's some enhancements. He noticed that there appeared to be a light at one end, or what he thought was a light. Now, if you look at this is one of his actual photographs. It's not being retouched or anything like that, but you can see it's a long, cylindrical, dark object. That's the blow-up of that object, and it has some kind of protrusion at the end.
But you could either argue that that's a light or it's a sunlight glinting off perhaps a metallic object at the top. Okay? But clearly an object in the sky. If it was a balloon, it would just be wind-borne. Objects, it's been analysed. Objects cannot tumble in a logical manner. Things don't tumble. If it's a balloon, it will go. It doesn't work like that. Huge dimensions. Okay? Peter, if you want to put the lights back on. Okay? This is another case that's come in. And this is the most recent case. 29th of September. That ain't long ago, is it? And basically, this officer's got about 30 years service, he's retired, and he's come back as what's called a police support officer. But he's still in uniform. This is a daylight sighting. It's a corroborated sighting. And what's important about this one is for the first time, I have had some official confirmation by the police for my work. Putting a long story short, time is short, and I want to show you a couple of video clips. But basically, after 7 years of research, I never had any interference. And then now I do have interference, and I was disciplined and got a 12-month written warning purely because when the MOD closed its UFO desk suddenly in December 2009, they basically said, we're not taking any more UFO reports from anybody, from the police or the public. So I then saw it as an opportunity to write to all the police forces in England and Wales and say, look, would you then send your reports that you're still going to get, because you get around 300 to 600 a year, would you send them to me and I'll research them in a private capacity? Oh, and by the way, I'm a police officer and I belong to this police force. And I've done that for credibility and said, look, I have a website, unofficial, for police officers. 3 of those forces have adopted me as a single point of contact officially, so they will do that. But because my chief constable got ribbed, had the mickey taken out of him by another chief constable, he thought I was bringing my force into disrepute, and I therefore had to go to a misconduct hearing and got a 12-month written warning, which is not good. Fortunately, that's expired, so I'm okay, but I have to now be a little bit more careful. All right? But the interesting thing about this site, the most recent sighting, is the fact that that's his drawing. It's not a great picture, but if you look where he's wrote UFO on the right, that's a cloud, and he saw it coming in out of the cloud, and he seemed to be watching 2 passing aircraft. But this is why it's interesting, because single point of contact, he sent me the police incident log. I don't usually get those. Every incident, even if there's a cat stuck up in a tree, creates an incident log, a number 421 of today's date. And everything that the police do in terms of their actions, which officers are deployed to that scene, are all written down. And he sent me it. And the 2 forces that had adopted me already are Humberside and Suffolk. This officer was the 3rd one. He's from Cheshire, and I didn't know this because they'd not told me. And he sent me the log. That's a copy of the front page of the log. That's how all police logs in Britain start. They're all using the same kind of software. They all look like that. An incident on the top left-hand corner, 386 of the day, 27th time it comes in and it's opened. Then everything else is, there could be many pages, it was a murder, it could be a whole book. But what's more interesting is the next page. Because at the top it says, report from the police officer, him, create a command and control incident. Action taken will be based on the information relayed to the officer. Inform the officer they can report the sighting to DC, Gary Heseltine, at my website. That's nice, isn't it? Right? DC Heseltine collates and investigates sightings of UFOs witnessed by serving police officers. So that's really good. I've now got some police forces officially recognising me as the person to send their police sightings to. So for me, that's a great breakthrough. It's official recognition, and it's the first time in print that I'd seen it. The other 2 forces rang me up and said, we'll send you a report. So I wrote it down. It's not the same as having a document that you can hold to people and say, there's the evidence. Okay? I told you about, this is a case that got away. Basically, UFOs historically are linked, or what falls under the UFO umbrella is also crop circles. A lot of this, you in the room will go, well, we're rubbish.
But believe me, it is under the UFO umbrella. 95%, maybe 98% of all crop circles are man-made, without a doubt. There are a lot of crop circle makers. However, this has been going on for a few hundred years, and there are historical records about objects that are big patterns in the cornfields. So it certainly wasn't done then. What you have is, in real crop circles, some researchers that I've met, I don't research them, but I've met experts who do, that those that are on the inside of a genuine one, the knuckles of the corn are blown out from the inside as if it's been microwaved. Okay, there's the heat source applied inside the circle. And similarly, soil samples from inside to outside are different. The soil samples inside appear to be irradiating with some heat, like a microwave, and the soil samples outside allow moisture in if they get wet. The soil samples inside, they don't. They seem to be resistant because they've been dried out. So they are under the UFO umbrella. The thing is, what would be nice is if we could get a real police officer to see a crop circle being made. Because that would be really good. And this guy, this police officer, rang me up and he said, I've got a case for you. It's brilliant. My sergeant's told me that he's seen 2 UFOs that made a crop circle. Whoa, this could be an important case. Get his number. He won't talk to you. He's just quiet. He doesn't want to talk about it. But he's told me, and this guy's as straight as a die. He would never lie. I believe him. Right, try to go back to him, try to get him to speak to him. In the end, he wouldn't. But basically, the story emerged that he, the sergeant, and was in uniform with a female officer in uniform. They were driving in Wales on a high valley road when suddenly they see 2 lights that are dancing in the sky, and it's just as sun up, dusk, dawn is about to break. So the sun's just about to come up, and they see these 2 lights making weird, wonderful patterns in the sky, and then suddenly they shoot off at speed. They drive to the edge of the hill and stop, get out, and below where they were was a new crop circle that hadn't been there. They'd been out on patrol earlier, hadn't seen it. They knew the area, and then they drive and they look down, and there's a crop circle. That would have been a good story, wouldn't it? To have a first-hand officer go on the record, but he won't. So it's a second officer hearsay account. So that's all it is. It's a hearsay account. I mentioned at the start I do an annual report. So this is the latest report. 52 on-duty cases involving 85 officers. Off-duty cases 16 involving 18, because sometimes man and wife, or friends together when they see something off-duty. Altogether, 68 new cases in the 9th report involving 103 police officers collectively. When you add that to the total figures from last year, we now have 425 cases between 1901, 2000, you just seen the most recent one, involving 903 British police officers. Conclusions? I don't like police statistics. I don't like any statistics, really, because all statistics can be manipulated to say anything they want. However, what's interesting in this is, of the 425 cases, 73% of the cases are multiple police officer corroborated cases. So it's not what the skeptic would say, it's the officer who's tired and confused, he's on his own. These are multiple police officer sightings, over 300 cases. So they are witnessing, over many years, real phenomena, and objects that are not moving in a conventional manner as have been described. Whilst I can't say that they're all ET, many aren't, many probably will have mundane explanations. On many of the ones where we have the close proximity sighting, where it's right in front of you, where we have dynamic movement, where we have radar confirmations, a large proportion of those cases on the database point towards what I would consider an extraterrestrial explanation. I think I've only scratched the tip of an iceberg. And I am absolutely certain, and I know that there is some talk that we're going to try to speak to a group of 300 Danish police officers. That if we did that, afterwards, and I've given a lecture, because they've had nobody to speak to, never have, I'd be very surprised if some Danish police officers didn't say, can I have a word? Afterwards, or by email. because this isn't unique. If you go to America, all over the world, there are police officers seeing UFOs. In America, there would probably be hundreds that I can remember already, some fantastic cases. The future, what does it hold for me? In about 18 months, I'm going to retire. It's a bit uncomfortable now for me in the police doing my work. I know that they look at my website, that's why I don't update it much, because I know that they do. It's a bit uncomfortable. So I want to write a book next year about police officer cases, because there's never been a book on UFOs anywhere in the world on police officers. So hopefully that will come out in 2013 as I plan to retire. I then will devote my time full time, or because I won't have murders, manslaughters and rapes to deal with. Okay? I think somebody in the audience is going to ask me about Rendlesham Forest, which is a very famous British case, arguably the second most famous case in the world, which I think there's going to be a question in the Q&A in a few minutes. Basically, I've written a film script with that, with a guy called Colonel Charles Holt. He was the guy most directly involved, and he was the deputy base commander of a nuclear facility, where multiple UFOs over 3 successive nights came to visit the base, or very near to it, just outside, for 3 successive nights over the Christmas period in 1980. It's a very famous case. All right? That's my lecture over with, but don't plan yet, if you were going to plan. Because there's a couple of little things I want to add. I said I'd show you some clips of UFOs. Do you want to see them? Can I show them? Okay, here we go. So let's get out of there. Let's open a second sequence. Might just want to turn the music down a little bit on this because it's done to music. This is a little sequence I put together. Title music is by Hans Zimmer, Last Samurai.
Watch for the object below the writing. There's a stationary object, bright white light. And is this not showing intelligence? The object below it is fixed, it's above fixed. The object below it is coming up. Watch the cloud. And then it's going to go to the right. 2 objects, it's going to go to the right, and then they're going to start moving off to the right. Nice little pair of lights. As you go. Footage, multiple UFOs, lights in the sky. Notice the objects in clusters moving around. No definition, the lights moving, making patterns in the sky. This was analysed over 1,000 hours by the military, We're concluding. This is not birds. This is concluding. Looks very similar, doesn't it? 50 years old. Watch the object in the middle at the top there. Just going to speed up, go through the gap.
I apologise for the loud noise there, but they've turned it up to maximum for the other clips. If you've still got hearing, which you may well not have, I apologise for that. But I think that's quite a good little sequence, and we should be told more about what's going on in the media. Let's see if we can get this to play again. Let's see if it will play in the news media. There is no loud noise of this one, so I don't know. Let's see if it'll play in the real world. Oh, here we go. It's the same object that I saw before. That's actually a 4-minute clip. I apologise for the loud noise. It wasn't quite as loud as that. Unfortunately, it's all the sound is locked away. But watch this object. It's rotating on its own axis. It's a flying earring, as I think it. It's pulsing anywhere from 2 lights to 4 lights. Watch what happens when it pulses. It kind of moves its shape. Now, it has been analysed by a physicist, and it was analysed for a documentary called The Journey that you can actually still buy, that was put out by UFO magazine. And basically, towards the end of the clip, you'll see actually that trees come into focus, so we were then able to extrapolate actually height and things like that. And the object's believed to be about 30 feet in diameter, or 9 metres in diameter. But the interesting thing is that it's operating in total silence. You can actually hear the guy recording it talking. He's amazed by these pulses of light. You can see it actually turn from front to back. You can see that when it turns, it's almost a disc shape in terms of narrow width. Multiple UFOs. That's one UFO that overtakes another. Now the one that was overtaken, look in relation to the ground, starts to move off and follow the first one. Again, I would argue that that's showing some kind of intelligence. Okay, this is the most common UFO seen abroad like that. We now go to another sequence. This is the sequence that was in that musical
interlude, and it's a great sequence. It's one of my favourites because people say, well, there's no intelligence behind UFOs. Well, you have an over in UFO, and he's actually bringing this attention to his wife, and the object at the top one is stationary, the bottom one's come up underneath, and then it's veering to the right, and I've got the full longer sequence, but this is just a montage. Basically, those two objects then start to go out to the right of the frame. So again, a very specific act from my point of view. This is the fleet footage that was also seen in part of that clip. It's not a great copy that I've got with me now, but you can see trees in perspective. What you've got is fleet footage is multiple balls of light, spheres, that are seen increasingly around the world. There's a sequence here. Notice as it zooms in, you'll see flickering objects appear from nowhere in the clusters. Look for suddenly objects. There's an object at the top of the screen that's now just going to start speeding up. All the others are staying the same, but that one is manoeuvring and taking up a position. What we now suspect is that these are probably remote objects, or whatever, and there are objects. Now this is a great clip from Mexico. What we have is fleet sequences. There are two types. There are moving fleet sequences of multiple objects, weird and wonderful shapes, and then you have fixed fleet. Fixed fleet means they hold a pattern across the sky. Okay, now you can see that all of these spheres are in position, holding a position, where one larger controlling object, which we believe is this large one, is going around. And you will see that some of the objects move a little bit as if they're taking up a position. You have, and you will see shortly, look out, all these objects, which aren't balloons, they're not tied together, they're all holding their position, apart from one or two that may move. The vast majority are all holding the pattern. Well, you know, if you release a balloon, they all go up and twirl and all over the place. Nothing can hold patterns in the sky. Even if we have air display teams, we get 8 or 9 aircraft that move as one, type formation, the Red Arrows in England. Is it the Fighting Falcons in Canada's team? Look at this object. We have cloud for definition. Not one of these objects moves. Look at it. In Guadalajara, Mexico, 2004. There are over 500 spheres holding their pattern across the sky. We have cloud for definition. What can do that? We, man, cannot recreate that. 500 objects. Not a question and answer yet. Alright? So you see how they're all holding formation? What it is, what the message is, who knows? But we cannot replicate 500 objects holding a pattern across the sky. We struggle with 9 aircraft in a formation. 500 objects, but what there is in the middle of this is this. Similar to the other object, it seems to be a bigger, perhaps more controlling object. We cannot recreate 50, never mind 500 objects holding formation. Now this one's a really interesting one, because it's more dynamic. Watch how the objects, see the triangle at the top, when they come close to each other, they light up, they move in a strange way. Look at this one, it's moving. All the others are moving in different formations. This one's going along the shape. Now I think this is the process of when they're getting into formation. But look at the way they interact with each other. They light, they blink up. Okay? There's some real dynamic. And I think the last little clip, look at this. They almost touch each other. There's like a flash off it. These are not things in our sky that we know about. What they are, not sure, but they certainly aren't known there. We cannot replicate any of these. Now look at the formation, it's almost in place now. There's very little movement now. I sent out some clips, daylight clips. You don't generally see those. I want to thank the Exopolitics group of Denmark for inviting me here. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you found it interesting. I hope you've got an open mind to the subject, because there's a lot of material out there if you go look in the right places. UFOs are real. I thank you for your time.